welcome back to Shoe and Show. Thank you for joining us this week. This is part of our Footwear Leadership Series, powered by Ortholite. Again, in this special series, we sit down with some of the top executives in our industry talking about their journeys, their leadership styles, how they shape culture internally. And we also want to thank Ortholite, obviously, for making this series possible. They power over 550 footwear brands globally, providing them with excellent comfort and performance for their products. Matt, this leadership series has been blowing up. Like, people have been asking to come on this leadership series. We do keep it exclusive. Sorry, folks. But the reason is because we really do want to talk to different people across the industry to hear their stories and hear how they're leading in these extravagant, extraordinary. There's a lot of adjectives for these times.
Yeah, some you can't repeat on a family program for sure.
That's true. Is this a family program? I guess it could be a family
program. It's clean. It's rated clean,
So
man.
we're
I think we've got like one F-bomb in 10 years or whatever, so we're good.
Well, I would say we're family, you and I, and now we've got another. The guest today can also join the family. So who do we have?
Yeah, we have Dan Sheridan, who is the CEO of Brooks Running. And Dan, I'm so excited to have you on this program for several reasons. One, running is having a moment. Brooks Running is having a moment. So it's very exciting to maybe unpack that a bit. But also, one look at your LinkedIn profile, and it looks like you're a Brooks Running lifer. I could be wrong. I'm not trying to judge your age. But one, welcome to the program. And as we get started, walk us through kind of your journey within Brooks Running and what you did before, if there was a life before Brooks Running.
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me, Matt and Andy. I'm a longtime listener, first time guest, right. I guess is what they say. So impressed with what you guys have done on this platform, and I'm humbled to be invited on. So yeah, you're right, Matt. I guess I qualify as a Brooks lifer. I showed up here in 1998, kind of fresh out of college. I was a high school teacher and basketball coach before this, and both my parents were teachers. So I tell people I went into the family business, and I didn't love it. I quickly got out. Part of my life, was all basketball and sport. So I grew up in team sports. So I loved coaching basketball, and I thought, well, I'll coach and teach. And I still feel like I coach and teach, just for the record. But yeah, so I showed up in 1998. I was a tech rep at Brooks, and at that point, Brooks was about 60 million in global sales. We were tiny, and you can read a lot about this, but we were unprofitable, poorly run. We were changing owners. I saw 4 CEOs in 2 years show up at Brooks.
Oh my gosh!
So it was a different place than it is today, obviously. And my career journey, for probably many people, is weird or strange, because I stuck around for 12, celebrate my 27th year here this August. But it's one of those stories where, you get lucky in a lot of ways. We rebooted our strategy in early 2000 to focus just on run. Jim Weber showed up. I had a leader that I respected and could learn from. The company started to grow, so there was more opportunity. And for the early part of my career, I was in sales. I was on the front end of the business and growing our sales here in the U.S. And then I moved, through general management and operations and IT and all right alongside Jim and many other leaders here. And obviously, the story of our trajectory. So super fortunate to be able to build my career here. Whenever I give talks, I ask if there's any sociology majors in the crowd, and that's what I was. I was a sociology major, so I didn't come out with a business degree. I tell people I got my MBA on the job here, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
I was a sociology major to start my first year at State, and I was poli-sci track, and I was like, I'm not thinking all the sociology stuff, so I jumped over to I was actually a criminal justice track. I jumped over to the political science department. So I
Okay.
feel you on the sociology thing.
I love it. I love it. There's one or two now, I guess, on this one.
Hey, you talked a little bit about being a teacher, but you also mentioned when you were talking about Jim and others about how they were good leaders to you in the organization. What did you learn from those guys that you now take, and from the teaching side too, right? We've got so much young talent coming into our industry, and footwear is so complex in terms of product development and sales. And so how do you look at like new folks coming in, and what are the leadership kind of lessons you've learned from others that you applied today?
Yeah, Andy, it's something I think deeply about. Obviously, I get asked about this quite a bit. And, for myself, I used to stumble through this answer. And I went to work on it because, I'm fascinated by leadership. I study it. I read about it. Whenever I see a story about leaders, I dive deep on their background. And, for me, some of the common themes that I see in great leaders is, one, they're incredible partners. They know how to connect with people first and foremost, and not only connection, but they know how to negotiate the relationship and ultimately collaborate to get better results. The leaders that I respect are glass half full type of people. They have optimism. Why would anyone follow you if you're not optimistic about the future? And so I've tried to craft my journey at Brooks with a glass half full approach. I'm an Irishman, so I have to reset my brain on that. I mean, I go in and think, boy, how's this person gonna steal my cheese? So glass half full optimism is something that I think great leaders have to have in their daily life. It doesn't mean that you're unrealistic. It doesn't mean that you're Pollyanna. It just means that you have an approach to your problem solving that is optimistic. And so I've been able to do that. I think great leaders are super curious, and that takes humility at times. It takes understanding problems before you go to solution, which at Brooks, we really try and do that. I've been in a lot of teams here over the years that really go to solve before they clearly understand problems. And that comes from, curiosity. And we try and instill that in our organization. And then, look, leadership's a fun word to throw around, but you got to produce. You got to be great at what you do. And so I talk about it in terms of excellence and in our daily work. And, not every day are we excellent, but all added up, over years, quarters, and cycles that we have, you got to put the ball in the net. And so I think that's kind of the frame that I always use. And what I saw in my journey is most successful leaders really work that puzzle to be able to show up in a partnering way, in a positive way, in a curiosity way, and ultimately the outcomes are pretty good if you do that.
Yeah. I mean, for me, Dan, with your background as a coach, I can think of 1,000 cliches as a coach, like give it 110% and get out there, give it all you got. But it's all about motivating people. So what are the lessons from your coaching background have you brought into how you motivate your employees and your team? Is it the collaborative approach? Is it humility? Is it positivity that you're leading them in a direction that they want to go? How do those skills translate from coach to CEO of Brooks?
Yeah, Matt, it's interesting. I'll back up a little bit and pull my family into this. We during COVID, when you're home, you got a lot to do. And my family, I have two kids, an 18-year-old daughter and a 16-year-old son. We went to work on what our family values were going to be, and we aligned as a family that ultimately we want to be humble and kind. Every day we show up, and so my leadership approach has a bit of that in it. And I think for people to connect with leaders, they have to get to know you. They have to know how you think. that motivates them to help you solve. And so for me, it starts with kind of a value set personally. And I have a sign here in my office that simply says, work hard and be nice to people. It's simple. It's a map for people to know that that's what's important to me. So first, it's getting to know your leaders. Secondly, is clear communication. I've seen over time here at Brooks where we fall down is where we're not clearly articulating to our organization what we're trying to do. And we learned that during COVID. We stood up weekly town halls where we just simply took everyone through that week's job to survive and continue to work through the disruption. That seemed to motivate our organization and move people through disruptive process. Finally, our frameworks. I think frameworks motivate people because they can see how they plug into them. And so what we've always tried to do is in times of disruption or times where we need to get people moving, create a simple framework so they can see where they plug in and they can clearly do their work alongside the long-term vision and strategy of our company. And we've had a lot of success with that. Ultimately it's got to be simple. I think motivation is a big word. You got to boil it down to simple things that people can see themselves in the work and then understand what the leaders are trying to do long-term. And that's one of the benefits of Brooks. Our ownership structure is one in which we can focus long-term. We're not on a 13-week calendar. We're on a 30-year calendar.
Wow.
Because ultimately, that's what Berkshire Hathaway wants from us. Build your brand over multiple years. And so I feel like I've got the greatest job in the industry because of that.
So you got your teams doing marathons then, not sprint, basically what we're looking at.
We use all of those running analogies.
Well played, Andy. Well played.
Yeah.
I like the point where you're pulling in like your family values into this too, because how can we be different at home as we are at work, right? It's authenticity. It's like the core values of who we are and how we lead. I do something similar with my kids. I've got 3 small kids. And before they go to school, I try to talk. We've got this saying now that we kind of do before they get on the bus, but it's pokes pick people up. It's like somebody today is going to need something on the playground. Someone's going to have a bad day. How are you going to go over there and comfort them or be nice to them in some way, right? So like, to your point, it's simple. It's like pokes pick people up. It kind of rolls off, but I think it's really important to have that.
We do the same thing, Andy. When they're leaving the house, I just say, be humble and kind. Be humble and kind. Yep. They rolled their eyes for a few years. Now they're in. They're in.
Well, you got to keep it up, right? Consistency is key with kids. So I do want to see, like, I want to talk to you about how you structure your teams, within Brooks, and how you approach that. Like, how do you have company-wide communications with folks? How do you create the teams so that there's agility across? Because we know that you guys are doing a lot in innovation, and running in many ways is a constant innovation battle, right? You're constantly trying to get it more comfortable. You're trying to get it to where it's lighter, more breathable, et cetera. There's a lot going on to that. How do you get those teams aligned? How do you structure your teams to make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, these are I think really hard processes that organizations choke on, and ultimately, the outcomes are a reflection of the system that you have in your organization. So, I think we've been a process-driven company for a long time, but in the recent, call it last couple of years, we've really gotten into what we call system thinking. And system thinking, the basic premise is that every outcome you get is a byproduct of the system that you've created, right? And so there's incentives in there, there's culture, there's process, there's personal behavior, all of those things. So we're a student of the system that we've created. And our exec team is working really hard to understand the Brooks system that is in place now, because what we know, right, is we're becoming more complex every single day. External factors are doing that to us. but just the scale and size of our business is changing. So we're going to work on our system here at Brooks to make sure it's the right system to create the outcomes that we have. In that is innovation. In that is execution, and just keeping the lights on and running the show here. But on the innovation side, it's always a topic that I get asked about. It starts with your people, and I already talked about the curious mindset that I think every organization has to have in the world we're living in. We've framed our world as VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And so that's a framework that we use with our organization. Innovation fits in all of that. And I think one of the misunderstanding in innovation in a lot of organizations and maybe young people in career is that innovation really only exists in product marketing and maybe front of the house stuff. And so what we try to talk about at Brooks is that innovation lives in every single function and in everybody's job. We're continually trying to innovate. So we've got great process there. It starts in R&D and our what we call run sites, our consumer insights group, but it really pulls through the entire organization. It starts with process, but I think it's a bit about the system that you create to do it.
I like that, because I think we had this. I'm a big soccer fan, right? And there's
Right.
always a thing. It's like you could tell other soccer fans, like, who plays defense? Everybody plays defense on the pitch,
Right.
right? Everybody. So who innovates? Everybody has to innovate. So I love that idea where it's like encouraging folks, not just setting up. I think it's great to have innovation teams that focus on that, like the moonshots, but everybody needs to come up with new ways to do things a little bit better, a little bit faster, save some money while you're doing it, and like have fun too, right? Like that's
One of the things that we've done is we start our monthly business review with wins. And so every manager that's in that meeting comes with innovation wins and project wins. And it's just a 10-minute sharing real quick of what was the win. And it highlights the areas where we're innovating at a level that's creating outcomes for us. And so you got to kind of institutionalize it in your organization as well.
Well, Dan, how do you strike the balance between the process and allowing the process to really drive that innovation while providing that opportunity for risk taking and thinking outside the box and experimentation? What's the balance, and how do you stay true to the process but allow for the risk taking?
Yeah. Good question, Matt. I think this is the hardest thing in business. And decisions these days, and you're living it, by the way, thanks for your leadership and all the trade talks. You're living it every day. And so our system is one in which, yes, we have diligent processes, but you build agility into it to make sure that you're relevant, you're on it in terms of all the disruption that's coming. And the way that we do it, right, is we have clearly defined process, but we know, because of the last 5 years with COVID and now trade and supply chain, that we have to have that agility. So a bit of it is having space for the disruption. And I mean mental space. So preparing your teams that things are not going to go as planned. When the tariffs were announced in April, we got on a town hall right away with our team. And the thing I said is, in my 27 years in business, I know nothing stays the same. And here we go again. Right. So preparing your team that what our plans are not going to play out the way they are on a PowerPoint or a strategy document. So we've really tried to lean into that agility thinking so that it's not a shock when we have these disruption. The risk-taking thing is super interesting. I mean, in business, you're taking risk almost on every decision you make, because there isn't a lot of certainty in terms of big decisions you're making. And so what we try to do is just understand the risks that we're taking around the world, whether it's in supply chain, our manufacturing piece, or front of the house with new product introductions. That's a hard one every time. The crazy thing about this performance run business is that we launch a brand new product, even when it's working great. Every 12 months, we redo it, and so
high water right there.
The risk that we have on new product introduction, right, that comes from deep science and innovation and the like, is real. And so you're trying to calculate those risks. But ultimately, what you're doing is you're sizing up, is it better for the customer? And if we can answer that question, the risks kind of stay to the side.
Yeah. Let me ask you kind of like what advice you give to younger folks who work at Brooks. Like how are you helping like cultivate the next generation of leaders in the same way that folks in the past that you mentioned had done something like that with you? As their and then the second part of that too is like how excited are you about the future? We've got a lot of if you talk about Gen Z, depending on what generation you are, or Alpha, there's always some kind of like little dig against these kind of younger folks. But at the same time, in our industry, I'm just interested on your viewpoint about some of the young folks in our industry. Are you excited about what could be and what is coming?
Yeah, I mean, I'm overjoyed with the team that we have and the recruiting that we have to fill our pipeline here at Brooks. And I think I have a unique view of what we call the class of 2025 or 2024 rolling into Brooks. And for us, let me start with kind of what we have in terms of a backdrop of recruiting. The very first thing that we look for is obviously incredible talent, and talent sometimes is super hard to judge in an interview process and reference and the like. And so a lot of the things that we do during an interview process is we'll give young in career projects during the interview process to present to us, and that's just it's a great way to kind of not assess the work, but assess how people think. Mm-hmm. And what I've seen over my career here is this deep thinking that is going on in this next generation. It's not surface level. And I think it has a lot to do with access to knowledge. They have access to knowledge that I didn't have when I interviewed here at Brooks in 1998. And so they're doing deep research on the individuals they're interviewing with, my career. They know my story before I even tell it. They know deeply about the journey of Brooks. They know our competitive set. They know exactly how we set up against our competitive set. There's times where I'm blown away by some of the interviews I do with younger people. We just welcomed in the 2025 intern class here in May. And we had an hour Q&A with myself and our president, Matt Dodge. I was blown away by the questions, and the courage they had to ask. So power differential doesn't matter to them. They can care less that I'm, a senior person at Brooks, because the knowledge that they have on our company is at their fingertips. And so they have confidence to ask the questions. I think that serves us really well as we bring these people into our organization. And then finally, once they get here and they're in a manager role here at Brooks, we have a robust management training for all of our employees. I just took our second chapter of it last week. We put everyone through what we call Brooks Connect. And it's really for us a way to institutionalize this system thinking of how we want to treat people, how we want to develop talent, ultimately the language we use so it's consistent across our organization. We've been working that for probably 6 or 7 years now, and it's changed how we develop talent at Brooks because it's a roadmap, it's a playbook, and everybody's held to the same accountability. So we're pretty diligent on how we train and recruit people here at Brooks.
Well, you must be doing something, right? I mean, you stuck around for 27 years, 28 years, like looking for that pension, I guess. I'm not sure.
That's right. That's right.
Hey, by the way, just for 3 Gen Xers, this wasn't a bad interview. We're never mentioned in any of it's baby boomers, millennials, Gen Z.
Right.
They don't even mention us.
That's right. The forgotten generation, maybe.
I think that's why we're so effective, right?
Yeah.
Like we're just like, okay, whatever. Like let them fight it out. I've got things to
Be
do.
humble, we'll work hard. There you go.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's exactly it. Well, Dan, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time and sharing a little bit about your journey, and how you kind of structure and think about, leadership, and leading people. And these conversations are so important in terms of how our industry can grab some ideas from different people and really make organizations better and really make footwear what we hope is the best place in any industry to work.
Thanks, Andy. I really appreciate what you guys are doing, and continue the great work on the trade side. We appreciate you here from Brooks.
All right.
Thank you, man.
Well, folks, that's a wrap of another episode of the Shoe and Footwear Leadership Series powered by Ortholite. A huge thanks to Dan for joining us today, and also to Ortholite for making this series possible. You can visit shoeleaders.com to find the entire category, all the episodes we have of these shoe leaders that we've been launching out this year. And we do hope you listen to every single episode. They're super fascinating. Everybody has a different idea or a different way of looking at things and enacting things. And I think that kind of is the secret sauce of footwear and shoes, if you will, of we all do it a little bit differently and think about it a little bit differently, but these ideas are tangible that you can take and insert into your companies, and hopefully, I would say reinvigorate people who are working right now who may have a tough time. The tariffs are really tough. The market's a little tough. But in our industry, we have really great relationships, and we all kind of pull together in the same way. And we hope this leadership series makes it a little bit easier to do that. So we appreciate you listening. And as always, until next time, Shoe It is out.